This is the colors, the flag of Ghana. Red for the blood that we shed fighting for our independence, gold for our riches, and green for the land and the vegetation, with the invisible star in the middle of the goal. The invisible star. There's only a chosen people in the world who can find that invisible star in the sky. Nkrumah was one of them. This is Ghana today. From the top to the bottom, Upper East region, Upper West region, Northern region, Brong-Ahafo region, Ashanti region, Eastern region, Volta region, Greater Accra region, Central region, and Western region. The coat of arms. This is the coat of arms of Ghana with the emblem freedom and justice. And this is what Africans have been fighting for their freedom. Finally, we have gotten our political freedom, our political independence, but we don't have our economic independence, and yet we still don't have our religious independence. So we have two freedoms in Africa that we are yet to achieve, our economic freedoms and our religious freedom. The national anthem reads like this: God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation great and strong, bold to defend forever the cause of freedom and of right. Fill our hearts with humility, make us cherish fearless honesty, and help us to resist oppressors' rule with all our will and might forevermore. The birth of the African Revolution on Independence Night, 6 March 1957. This is what Kwame Nkrumah said: the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. This statement reinforced the unselfishness of Kwame Nkrumah as a Pan-Africanist. Any part of Africa still under colonial rule was against Kwame Nkrumah's being. This statement sent shockwaves across Europe, and by 1960, 17 African colonies were granted their freedom and admitted to the United Nations organization. The statement also has a second component, and that second component was to let Ghanaians to celebrate their independence, but not to be euphoric, because euphoria has its own problems. With euphoria, Ghanaians will forget that the next door neighbor, Togo, or the Ivory Coast, or what is called today Burkina Faso, was called Upper Volta, had not gained their freedom. So Nkrumah cautioned against the exuberance and the euphoria. And that's what the meaning of the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it's linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. The horrors of slavery did not prevent colonialism. After receiving the mantle from Great Britain, Kwame Nkrumah, astute as he was in history, knew that he had to speed up the pace of development of Ghana and at the same time prepare nationalists from the rest of the colonized states to wage their own struggles against their colonial masters. He referred to it as the creation and furnishing of the bridgehead for organized assaults upon colonialism in Africa. He defined the aspirations of Africans thus. What are the aspirations of Africans? And therefore, they desire to regain their independence and to live in peace. They desire to use their freedom to create a union of African states on the continent, and thus neutralize the evil effects of the artificial boundaries imposed by the imperial powers and promote unity of action in the fields. These are Africa's ideals. Kwame Nkrumah. Now, the development of Ghana, as Nkrumah, as stood as he was, realized that the European powers were not going to allow him to achieve his goal as a first-generation leader. So he set out to prove to the imperialists that Africans are capable of governing themselves. The Nkrumah CPP administration set out to raise the standard of living for the Ghanaian people with the first and second 5-year development plans, with the consolidated plan in between. By 1964, conditions showed that the first 2 development plans had been carried out with a high degree of success, with these the results. Ghana had one of the most modern network of roads in Africa. Takoradi Harbour had been extended, and the great artificial harbour at Tema, 80 miles from Accra, the national capital, the largest in Africa then, built from scratch, was completed. Large extensions to the supply of water and to telecommunication network had been constructed, and further extensions were underway. Agriculture was being diversified and mechanized. The Volta River project, designed to provide electrical power for Ghana's great social, agriculture, and industrialization program, was almost completed. In education, progress was equally impressive. In 10 years, Nkrumah's government achieved more than the entire period of colonial rule. Nkrumah's government gave priority to the construction of school buildings and the training of the requisite number of teachers for all levels. It also took the unprecedented step in Africa of making all education free from primary to university level. A medical school and Ghana Law College were also established. Comparative politics, colonial rule versus Nkrumah's CPP in education. 67 years of colonial rule versus 10 years of Nkrumah's CPP. We consider primary enrollment in schools. For 67 years, the British were able to educate or enroll 154,360 students. And Nkrumah in 10 years, 481,500 students. Middle school enrollment under the British, 66,175 in 67 years. In 10 years, Nkrumah, 160,000. Secondary technical, 67 years of British colonial rule, 3,559. In 10 years under Kwame Nkrumah, 19,145. Trained teachers, 67 years of colonial rule, 1,916. In 10 years under Kwame Nkrumah CPP, 4,552. University enrollment for 67 years, 208 students. In 10 years under Kwame Nkrumah CPP, 1,204 students. Africa must be free. Africa must unite. This is the beginning of the blueprint that this presentation is trying to tackle. Nkrumah talked the talk and walked the walk. In his speech to the National Assembly on December 16, 1959, this is what Kwame Nkrumah said. Africa is marching forward to freedom, and no power can halt her now. This reinforced his earlier warning to European powers that the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it was linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. African unity. Today, Nkrumah said, we are one. If in the past the Sahara divided us, now it unites us. And an injury to one is an injury to all. That is a conference of independent African states in Accra on April 15, 1958. Nkrumah's CPP government healed an injury inflicted on the sister state of Guinea by the former colonial power, France, under General de Gaulle, by uprooting every pipe bone from the country. Ghana and Nkrumah came to the rescue by loaning Guinea 10 million pounds. African unity actually started with the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. 3 independent countries came together to form a union. Ghana, Guinea, Mali. This was the precursor to the Organization of African Unity. But this is what we're still missing. We're still missing the African unity. If Africa cannot get unity, if Africa cannot get united, the evil that we see today from my introduction will linger and linger and linger. These were the enduring legacies of Kwame Nkrumah. A legacy can be good or bad. It can be compassionate or evil. It can be positive or negative. It can be everlasting or enduring or short-lived and fleeting. Nkrumah's personal legacy is everlasting and enduring. His professional legacies are that of a visionary, boldness in approach and fearless in caution, the greatest paradigm shift in world history. Bold. You can't talk about African unity if you are not bold. That's what Nkrumah's vision was, boldness. Africa has already been balkanized by the complete cutting of the continent into pieces and sharing it among European powers. So the balkanization Nkrumah talked about is this: the political situation in Africa today is happening, and the same thing at the same time disturbing. It is happening to see so many new flags hoisted in place of old. It is disturbing to see so many countries of varying sizes and at different levels of development, weak and in some cases almost helpless. If this terrible state of fragmentation is allowed to continue, it may be disastrous for all of us. That's why he was called for the African unity.